Another ingredient of additive lighting is the use of fill light. Excessive contrast is usually caused by a large dark object blocking or subtracting the ambient light, such as this woods to the side of our subject. That causes the side of her face to be too dark, and needs to be filled in with light. I fixed that problem with my reflector, using the mirror side to reflect the soft sky light. The before image shows a good main light, but deep shadows on the wood side. The final image shows that the problem was licked. I was photographing this girl with a strong sunrise backlight that needed to be blocked from the camera in order to avoid flare. I set up the algoba to do that for me, but she also had a deep shadow because of the main lighting. While this amount of contrast might look acceptable on a monitor, it's too high for prints. Turning the algoba around, I was able to use the white side to act as a reflector for the deep shadow side of her face. The most common fill light problem outside comes from insufficient fill under the subject, leading to raccoon eyes. This placement of the fuzzy flector produces a very strong fill. Be careful though that the bottom panel doesn't reflect light into the camera, causing flare. Often you can turn the fuzzy flector at an angle to avoid that. She would see this view of the lighting. So this is the before and the after. Good lighting can reduce the need for retouching. Neither of these have been retouched. It was a cloudy day and this girl was sitting on her porch where an opening in the trees allowed skylight to create good facial modeling. So we've got a good main light. But the horizontal planes and creases in her face are a little dark because the dark green grass wasn't reflecting any of that light to fill in those shadows. Dropping the full length of the mirror side of a fuzzy flector on the grass in front of her filled in those shadows. And this is the result of the reflector fill. As you can see, the shadow areas on the face are sufficiently filled in by the mirror side panels of the fuzzy flector. This was an early morning hazy light that provided a strong low light, which is good. But even that almost ideal light can be aided by a fill reflector where we need it. The main light's position was okay, but the black top sucked light below the subject. So the cure is to place a reflector on the ground. Before I put the reflector on the ground, we had a bit of a dark eye bag problem. But that reflector on the ground fixed it. A close-up crop of the previous image shows the before and the after. Less retouching is needed when the light is right. The direction that the fill light comes from needs to be considered. The next four images were done in the ancient film days, so forgive the film scans of this and the client images that I'll show in a minute. This is the view that the subject saw. A bright sky, but a lower dark area because the green grass sucked all that light. Placing my fuzzy flector on the ground took care of the problem that I'll be showing. We can see that her eyes are dark,
but I really love her cheek structure, so I don't want to mess with that. So using that reflector outside filled in her eyes but left her cheeks in shadow. Man, you gotta love those diffusion days.
Let's discuss the placement of the fill reflector. Do we put it on the same side as the main or opposite of the main? The answer is it depends on what you want to fill and how much light was there to begin with. Outside, there's often some light, even if it isn't coming from the right direction. So adding a reflector on the side opposite the main can actually add too much fill light, adding width to the body. Whereas placing the fill reflector on the same side fills in the eyes but doesn't widen the body. A reflector opposite of the main light gives us this result of making him look wider. A fill reflector on the same side as the main light helps the subject to look slimmer.
And the close-ups of the before and after. This was the first exposure of the session, and I tried to start with the gray card to get the right color balance. I also deliberately shot it at a fast shutter speed so that the only light recorded is from my flash. I'll go into the reason for that much later in the section on color consistency. Anyway, because the ambient light is way lower than my main softbox flash, the diffused highlight to shadow contrast is high. Reducing that contrast with more fill and background exposure was a very easy change. I simply let the camera include more ambient light with a longer exposure. And I did that by switching from manual to aperture preferred auto exposure.